You're live now.
I believe Brian's here via his iPhone. He might be.
I'm here and
multitasking.
listening.
Okay. All right, we are live on YouTube if you want to start the meeting, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Committee of the Whole for the Revere School Committee, December 15th. Let's salute the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And
to the republic
for which it stands, one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
with liberty
and justice for all.
Roll call the members.
Mrs. Bronson Rizzo,
Here,
Mr. D'Ambrosio,
Here.
Mr. Ferranti,
here.
Mrs. Gravellisi,
here,
Mr. Sinella,
Here.
Ms. Ty,
here,
Mayor Arrigo.
Here. The first item on the agenda is the consent calendar.
move to approve the minutes of the previous meeting, Mr. Mayor.
Second,
All in favor, all opposed?
Aye,
So moved. We'll go to warrants.
I have questions.
Okay, I'll do my best. Matt had something suddenly come up with his family and is going to try to join us, but anticipated he would be late if he was able to make it at all.
Okay.
So,
All right, Diane, on page 1,
Mhm.
American arbitration, there are three $325 checks. I just really want to know what it's for.
so that's part of the, that's a fees that we have to pay in advance for arbitration proceedings that are scheduled to come up.
Is that the one just for the Breakfast Club people, or does that include the Wayland school teachers?
I believe that is for just the Wayland school teachers.
Okay. All right, Diane, on page 2, number 52, Zoom video communications, and it's 1,800. It says video conferencing.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a licensing fee, or what would that be for?
It is, and that is fees so that administrators could have, Zoom is free to educators for small group meetings. But if, for example, the high school wanted to have a staff meeting, which would require more than 100 participants, then you need to have the paid different level license. And
Okay.
so we've got a few of those licenses actually throughout the district. We have one here for the school committee meetings. It's also required that you pay the fee and have extra for the webinar format, which many of the principals use when they have meetings with parents.
Okay. On page 5, 155 and 156, just a question, what cafeteria equipment and what school that's for? One is 17,000 and one's like 7,000.
Yeah, I know that we bought quite a bit of new cafeteria equipment, and much of that is grant funded, but I can look into exactly what schools they were and what pieces of equipment they replaced.
And I just have one more. Page 7, number 245, retro equipment. It says Aruba access parts, like 10,000. And it says Comtrack Corp cabling, 12,000.
So Retrofit is the company that we use, and Comtract Corporation is all related to our IT infrastructure. Retrofit is actually where we get all of our Chromebooks and laptops and those items. I know that $10,000 was for laptops, and the cabling, I can ask Jonathan exactly what cabling work was done, but that's the kind of work that needs maintenance over the years.
All right, I'm all set. Thank you.
I have just a couple, Diane. It's on pages 1 and 2, the handwriting. In how many schools do we have handwriting? I know it was a big thing in the Paul Revere, but I see where it says practice books and consumables.
Can you give me a line item, Carol? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
26, Carol.
Number 26.
Okay. Oh,
On
yeah,
page
handwriting
1.
without tears.
And the
That
first one,
is
the
for the
T
Paul-
is,
Yeah,
no
that's for
T
the
is
Paul.
learning on the top. There are 2 of them.
What was the second one that you said? I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. It's right on the top of second page.
Oh,
Number
okay.
41.
No tears learning. I believe that actually both of those are for the Paul Revere School, but I can
Oh,
confirm
Okay.
that.
I just think that's one of the comments I get from people all the time. When are our kids ever going to learn how to handwrite? They'll never be able to read manuscripts. I said, well, times change. But
That
I
they do.
myself would like to see that. And one more question, Diane, on the bottom of that first page, number 33.
Mhm.
Was the teacher breakfast, was that for the day when all of them first came in, or?
Yes, that would have been for one of those charged to one of the particular school accounts.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Sinella?
if I may, Diane, on page 1, number 28, Blanchard and Son trophies. And it comes under instructional materials, purchase order 202, $250 for parking stickers.
I will have to look into that one.
I mean, I know they do trophies and stuff like that. Didn't know they were doing parking stickers.
Yeah, and I know that for a time we had parking stickers in the back lot at the high school to differentiate student cars from staff cars. And I don't believe they're using that practice anymore. I'm wondering if this has something to do with the COVID testing site, that there might have been confusion over who was parking where for what reason. So I can look into that and find out.
I would think that you probably have it done by a printer, not by a trophy manufacturer, but okay.
Okay.
Also now on page 3, numbers 96, 97, 98.
Mhm.
For the bus contract, 76,000, 94,000, and 85,000 for regular transportation inside.
Mhm.
That's almost $250,000. Who are we transporting?
So that was part of a negotiated agreement with Haley Bus that we would pay 50% of the contracted costs in anticipation of, we actually thought by now we would be transporting kids. We're not.
But I thought
Hopefully,
I thought that was negotiated last year for the end of the year. I didn't realize, I mean, we knew we weren't coming in needing buses, so why is it carry over?
well, actually, last year we negotiated a 60% payment of the contract for last year. This year we renegotiated to 50%, so we saved a little bit more money. And it's really the same discussion that we had last year around if we release our relationships with all of our vendors and service partners, that it means that we can't quickly come back to school when it's possible to do so. If, for example, the vaccine that's now beginning to be distributed is available in January, but we had no contract for transportation, we would have to go out to bid and reinitiate that process before we would be able to bring kids back to school. And
finish up.
and the other thing I was going to say is that we are in a binding contract with Haley Bus, a 3-year contract for last year, this year, and next year. And like everything else in COVID, we've been renegotiating as many contracts as we can, but we are legally obliged to honor those contracts to a certain extent.
But do they have to show what their expenses are, or they just arbitrarily say, you owe us $250,000? I mean, their drivers are all part-time help. And we said last year that they may have loans or something on the equipment. But I mean, I mean, I would want some kind of show of, they had 100 bus drivers show up sitting in a tent somewhere, but I mean, at least it's just that they're arbitrarily sending bills and we don't know what their costs are. We're taking them at their word. I mean, this is some serious money. This isn't, $2,000, $3,000.
Mhm.
I mean, are they required to show us to send a bill? 10 buses went here, or they were supposed to go there and we paid for a driver?
We haven't asked them to give us an accounting other than what their overhead costs would be. That was part of the negotiation that Matt Cruz did with them. That brought us to the 50% number. And it was really to cover their overhead and maintenance of their buses so that we could ensure that we would have services available basically on demand when we're able to bring students back to school.
So you're afraid that if we don't pay them, they're going to say, when we need them, go someplace else. So
Well, what they
intimidation.
might do actually is contract with other school districts so that they wouldn't be available to help us when.
But you admitted last year that they weren't even, they kind of cut up a pie that each company's bidding separate territories. There's no competitive bid. I thought the state was supposed to be looking into that.
Yeah, and I'm not aware that anything has happened at the state level on that front. I can make an inquiry, but I don't believe there's been any progress on that.
But it's interesting because there was a law that no service, no pay. But boy, the legislature pushed that through pretty quick to make sure they had it. Maybe their lobby's stronger than the school committees or parents or anything else, but this is wrong. Well, Diane, thank you. Whatever you can find out, I'd appreciate.
Okay, I'll see if I can get more information on that.
Thank you.
I do think that it's a piece of the economic puzzle, which is horrendous right now. And just trying to make sure that every business in the Commonwealth isn't going to go under because of the circumstances we find ourselves in. And I know that it's a lot of money, and it sounds like we're just flushing a lot of money right out the window, throwing it out the window, I should say. But I do think that we all need to kind of try to protect and help each other to the extent that we can, and make sure that we are all in good positions to resume our regular habits as soon as we're able to do that.
God willing. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's it all. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Sinella. Any other members on warrants? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to financial reports. Any members have any questions?
No, I
Mr.
didn't.
Mr.
So
Franti,
the one piece on the financial report really harkens back to a piece that we've been talking about since last summer. And that is where we found out that the state allocation for the school department was going to be not exactly what we expected it to be, but we understood then in our finances support to date that we have the funding to close the gap in the $1.9 million, which is, basically what we thought we were going to get from the state that we didn't. And much of that, I shouldn't say that we didn't get from the state, because we did get the 1.6 million in coronavirus relief funds, which were meant to supplement our budget so that it would close that 1.9 million gap. And it did leave us with a $300,000 difference there. But as we have discussed in the summer and since then, when the council took their vote last month about changing the funding allocation to the school department, we do have the finances. There are items that we had budgeted for that we're not spending. Transportation is one of them right now. And even though we're spending a good chunk of money in order to maintain that contract, we're still not spending all of the money from that contract. And of course, there are other areas where we've seen savings as well. And so this is a funding reallocation that we have discussed at several meetings. And I know Mr. Ferranti has reviewed it with Mr. Cruz extensively. And so this is not new, scary deficit information. It's just taking the legal action of the school department to reclass these appropriations.
Yeah, the only question, Diane, I have is, I get the first one's a carry forward, we took care of that. But I'm not sure where Matt got these numbers with the reducing the transportation salaries and the tuition. I mean, I just really couldn't figure out where those numbers came from. I'm assuming in the transportation, because we budgeted for Bob Farrell and Seth, we only had one, so I'm assuming the money came out of that budget when we did it.
Mm.
The tuition money, I'm not quite sure, because when we did the budget, there was an increase of about $750 there, and now we're reducing it $1 million. I mean, I think that Matt should really give us an explanation of where these numbers are coming from. It just, I don't get it.
So these are, yeah, and these are actual costs that we haven't spent. And in addition to what you mentioned on the transportation budget, there's also the salary savings from the crossing guards and those part-time bus drivers who accepted a furlough. So there's savings there, and the tuitions to non-public schools in a similar regard. If those schools are in a remote learning environment, there was some renegotiation of costs around what those tuitions would be.
Okay. So the
Diane,
increase that, can I just finish one more? So just the increase that we had, because the kids aren't going in-house learning, we're saving money on that, and that's why he reduced that part of the budget.
That's right. And that applies to only some kids. We do have some of our students, about 100, who are engaged in full-time at-school learning, and who are transported to their private schools. And, we do have still kids who are engaged, but there are some who those circumstances have changed.
Okay, thank you.
And so naturally, we couldn't anticipate that when we were all working on this budget last spring and in the early summer. We thought we'd all be in school right now.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Mrs. Rizzo?
No, I was just going to say to Michael, for schools like Lighthouse and Seam and Valley and Shore Collaborative, a lot of students did not go back. So that's money we're not spending. Some parents have decided not to send them back.
Okay, thank you.
Any other members have questions about the financial reports? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to communications. We have a communication about disposal of outdated textbooks that was not voted on at the last school committee meeting.
And we actually did discuss it at the last meeting, and I think we just forgot to vote it.
I thought we voted it in the consent calendar.
Yes.
I thought it was as a whole.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we did too.
But to be safe, we'll do it.
Sure.
Should we read the communication?
Do we need to read it, or do we need to just vote it out again tonight?
Just vote it.
Just vote it, right?
I think just vote it out.
Okay.
As the consent calendar.
Yes.
Yep.
I can just briefly state for those who might be interested that it's the request to dispose of outdated textbooks that are over roughly 20 years or older, and no longer being used.
Roll call.
Oh, it's
Well-
consent calendar.
You want to vote it separately, or you just want to vote as part of the consent calendar?
When
So
we do the
could
consent
vote
calendar, you
as
take
part
it
of
out of
the
the,
consent calendar at the regular meeting. We could just vote
Correct.
as part of the consent calendar.
yeah.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
We'll move on to personnel items. Dr. Kelly, do you want to? Speak to
I
those.
think that folks got that report. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Okay.
Diane, I just have one. Early childhood, they use the classroom aids for remote?
I don't know what you mean by that.
There's 2 early childhood paraprofessionals that were hired. How are they being used for remote learning? I just out of curiosity.
Richie, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, so Stacy, they've been repurposed for now until we can bring back early childhood. But at that time, they would go back to that original position.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense.
You're welcome.
Any other
And
members that, Ms. Ty?
Just a question, and the family liaisons, are they active now in the community? All of them?
They are, yes. And the principals have been really amazed at how incredible they all are and what a great job they're doing connecting families. So I feel like so far the program that Dr. Garcia has put together with the rest of his team have really done a great job, and we're getting more and more parents engaged every week.
Great. And the social workers and they're all out there too?
Oh, yeah. They're doing
So-
incredible work.
I think maybe at the last meeting it was that you told us that everybody had been accounted for except a very small number of kids. 4. Just 4 kids. And have we been able to find those 4 kids since the last time you told us?
I'll need to circle back and check that data again. I haven't had the chance to do that.
Okay.
Diane, I
just-
have, I'm sorry.
But
go ahead,
it's
Jeff.
just that when I hear that in other school systems, that there are multiple kids who are missing and that they haven't been able to find, I think that's a real tribute to, say, the parent liaisons, definitely to the social workers and to the teachers themselves who are calling up, trying to find out where those kids are, actually visiting their homes. I saw one on moving around Beachmont last week.
Yeah.
So it's a great thing.
Yeah, I'll tell you, many of our social workers have been, especially with our highest need kids, going and doing home visits, not inside the home. They're, the child might be up on the porch and the social worker down on the sidewalk, but just really doing that interpersonal one-on-one check-in and, making sure kids have what they need and feel connected and know that there's somebody there for them. And when we look at the data from our surveys at the regular school committee meeting, I think you'll see the effects of that. One of the questions we asked the students was if they know how to get in touch with their guidance counselor or social worker if they need help. And I think the data bears out that most of them do. We're able to look at the data and find some pockets where we need to do a little bit more work in that area. For example, freshmen at the high school had a
Yeah.
lower reporting rate than did
Yeah.
the juniors and seniors. That's to be expected because the older kids have established relationships. But it helps us really target where we need to focus our work to make sure that everybody's getting what they need.
Right. Great. Thank you.
Any other members? Okay.
Michael, did you have
Kate-
something? I thought Michael started to say something, maybe not.
Yeah, I'll just ask the question. I mean, Diane, it looks like we hired 4 aides. I know 2 of them are early childhood.
I'm looking at the wrong page.
Well, I'm looking at the 2 pages, the one that was with the meeting, the one that Robin sent us. And the early childhood, did some of the aides resign or something, that reason to hire them, or did we need them? The early childhood aides.
I'm gonna see if I can find what you're looking at. I feel like I'm looking at the wrong document because even when Stacy asked her question, I have a document that just has 3 teachers who were hired.
Well, we got 8 of them.
Oh, there's another one.
There's 2 of them.
Okay, okay.
Diane, it's the page before.
Right.
Ah, thank you.
Okay.
That's what I'm missing. I'm like, what is she talking about? Okay. All right, so Michael, your question was about the 4 aides?
But you hired 4, 1 resigned and 1 retired.
Mm-hmm.
And I
So
guess
it's
the
a
okay, go ahead.
+2. We're at a +2, right?
Okay, yeah, and I assume that the early childhood aides.
Most
And the plus
likely.
two.
And I can tell you, remember that we left any open positions open from the spring.
Right.
We stopped filling any openings in March. So we were down a large number of paraprofessionals by the time the school year started, and reassigned folks where we needed them so that we could keep everybody employed. And now we're starting to hit that nexus point where we have to start backfilling positions that we had left open.
Okay.
And I'll ask Richie again if he wants to add anything to that.
You're spot on. So we've been slowly starting to hire the paraprofessionals back. I think within the past week, we've hired 2 or 3 back to kind of fill some of those slots, and we'll continue to do so into the new year.
Are we keeping them all the aides busy, Richie?
Absolutely. They're doing an amazing job, Michael.
They really are. They're incredible.
Okay.
Across the board, they're running breakout rooms within the Zooms to have those small group settings that you would see in a typical classroom, while the teacher is working with a larger group of students and vice versa. They've really been invaluable.
Okay, good.
Okay, any other members? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 2, which is the remainder of school year meeting dates.
Shall we look at a calendar and pick
Yeah,
some?
I need dates for next year, at least the first 4 months, if we have a tax season. God only knows.
Okay,
So, I mean,
January,
we've been focused on the third Tuesday of the month. I don't, if we want to stay with that tradition, the January date would be the 19th.
Michael, is that okay with you?
Yep, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay,
The February date would be the 16th.
16th.
But that's vacation week. Does it make a difference to anybody? I know nobody's probably going anywhere, but
Well,
That's fine with me.
fine with me.
Yep,
okay, that's fine.
Okay, everybody?
Mhm.
yep.
March would be the 9th. Oh, no, I'm sorry.
No,
16th.
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 Also. April again falls on the vacation week.
So,
So that would be the 20th.
20th.
Okay.
okay,
May would be the 18th,
uh-huh.
and June would be the 15th.
Right.
Diane, do we need a special meeting for the new officers coming in? Or can we just do it at the January meeting?
I don't
No,
know
we
the
could just
answer to
do it
that.
at the January meeting because we're not a new school board. It's the
Okay.
same school board.
That's
We
fine.
still need an organizational meeting, no?
Yeah, we have
Well, we
to,
could do
we
it
have to have
right
the
before
organizational.
regular meeting.
We have to have that at the beginning of January. The what, first Tuesday?
Is that
The 5th?
fourth?
The
Fourth.
5th. For the organizational meeting.
I don't know why I thought you guys only did that in an election year.
No, every year.
No, we've always
Every year?
had it.
Okay.
Yep.
Not in my experience.
No,
Yeah, we always have had it.
but you had to do it in the first because you had to be sworn in. We've
The
already been
first
sworn in.
meeting.
So you
We've
could
always
have
had
the
to
first
wait.
meeting.
I mean, if you want to have a special meeting, it's fine, but we don't have to.
We've always had one.
Maybe you always have, but the whole school committee hasn't always, so
Yeah, no, the
You
whole
had
school
your own
committee.
meeting. You had your own meeting.
I'm talking about a little
Stacy-
bit before.
Well, the past 8 years we have.
It's all right. Let's just do it. Get it over with.
Yeah, I don't care. It
Well,
doesn't
you
matter to me.
know,
I'm not
is
going
this-
anywhere.
Is there something wrong with being organized and having a meeting to do it to set up our year?
Nope. I'm fine with it.
We've always had the organizational meeting.
Well,
Right, so-
Michael, you pick the date in January, then you want the organizational meeting.
That's fine, Carol.
The
January's
5th.
fine with me. That's fine. The
January
first-
5th.
That's fine. I'll make it work.
When
Okay,
did Michael become the sole?
I know. Why, are you busy on January 5th,
We need
Michael?
to-
Who knows what's gonna
understand
happen
that.
this year?
The tax year is going to be extended till July or August. so
Well, they
don't worry
might
about
start
it.
in April. Who knows?
Yeah, don't worry about it.
All right, I
Well,
will
that
give
would be me,
Robin
Michael.
the dates to post.
Okay.
And actually, that January 5th meeting, I'm thinking maybe we should put an agenda together for that sooner than later so that it can get posted over the vacation week.
Sure.
Okay.
all right.
Any further comments on the school year meeting dates? Okay, we'll move on to SLT report.
So I'm gonna share my screen here. Can you all see the document that I have up?
Yes,
Very
So
small.
we received this from DESI last Friday, and you can see that they identified Revere as preliminarily not cleared to meet the new SLT standards set by DESI. And the reason is this benchmark they decided that the Board of Education voted on this morning, saying that we must adhere to, that we have to have at least 40 hours of synchronous instruction over a 2-week period while we are in a full remote model, which obviously we are. If I scroll down here, we are not cleared because our remote synchronous hours average less than 40 across the district. And you can see that at our elementary levels, we're right on target with the 40 hours of synchronous time. At the middle school and the high school, we missed the mark. Middle school by 5 hours every 2 weeks and high school by 2 hours every week. And part of the reason, Richie talked about how at the elementary level, when we do small group work with kids, we often have a paraprofessional, or if it's an inclusion class, a co-teacher who can each take a group of kids to do their small group work. That doesn't happen at the middle and high school level because we don't have paraprofessionals at the middle and the high school level. So if you look at the sample student schedules that are in our reopening plan, you'll see that there are blocks of time for middle school and high school students for individualized instruction. And there's actually 2 kinds of blocks at each level. One is a block of time when the teacher says, Fred, Stacy, and Carol, I want you to log back into our extra block. And it could be that Fred, Stacy, and Carol are doing really well, and the teacher wants to push them with some advanced coursework so that they can get the honors credit for the work that they're doing on that unit. We talked about our grading practices over the last several months. It might also be the case that Fred, Carol, and Stacy were absent for a couple of days, and the teacher wants to make sure that they're caught up and haven't missed anything from their course load or any myriad form of reasons. The point is that the teacher is able to differentiate instruction and meet the needs of individual students on a regular basis, instead of kids having to wait a week or however long to schedule an appointment with a teacher, which is something that most kids wouldn't do in the first place. And the same thing happens at the high school level. We were really thoughtful about that. You'll recall that when we designed our reopening plans, we included parents, students, teachers, administrators, everybody on our committees so that we could really think carefully about what was going to best serve our students. not aware of the fact that in the middle of the school year, or almost at the midpoint of the school year, DESE was going to come back with some new regulation that we were unaware of, and now expect us to go back and change these schedules for middle school and high school students. It's obviously something I'm not very pleased about, if you can catch that in my tone. I think it's relatively unfair, and I also think it's somewhat short-sighted, which I shared with the Board of Education in my comments to them this morning. I feel like the work that we're doing, reaching out to kids and making sure they're engaged and meeting them in small groups so that we can be sure that they have what they need, is being undervalued in favor of synchronous time. And all they did to gauge that was to look at the number of hours that we do of synchronous time. They're not looking at the quality of that time or what schools are doing in that time. And as you can see here, their suggestion is that we add 11 minutes to the school day across grade spans, including at the elementary level where they're already meeting the target. Adding 11 minutes to the school day at the high school level, because they take 4 classes a day, would mean lengthening each synchronous class by 3 minutes, which in my mind would yield virtually nothing for students. But it would have to take that time away from either the time they have to do small group work. Richie, can you look at the waiting room and see if I think Matt Cruz is there and trying to get in, if you could let him in. This would mean taking this time either away from the small group work, or taking time away from the PLG sessions we designed for teachers to have, or taking the time away from the sessions that we built into every teacher's schedule so that they could contact families when students are struggling. All of those activities, I think, are far more valuable in ensuring that the kids are well engaged and getting the education they need than adding 3 minutes of academic time to each of their individual sessions. It makes no sense to me. Dr. Mokaba sat in on a meeting with the Department of Education today, and basically they said that there'll be more information forthcoming, but they expect school districts to act on this by January 11th. Which again, I think is incredibly unrealistic. It took us over 2 months, 2.5 months between writing our plans and then negotiating those schedules with the teachers. And teacher schedules are a subject of collective bargaining. So making these changes would mean that we would have to go back to the bargaining table with both the teachers union and the paraprofessionals union, which is not something that I'm encouraged about doing. We understand that there is going to be a waiver process, that we can make an argument to the state that our structures are better than what they're proposing, and changing the schedules that we have existing would not be more helpful to students. And we fully intend to engage in that process once the state tells us what it is. The meeting that Dr. Mokaba attended today, they indicated that that information should be out in the next week. So that's where we are with that.
Mr. Mayor?
Mrs. Rizzo?
I just want to say, Diane did a wonderful job testifying today. And it was disappointing. I mean, we've already done 4 months of school, and for them to come back and ask for this to be changed is a little disheartening. And to have a 7-4 vote to keep it the way they would like it, I am disappointed. I do hope that anything that comes forward in the next week will be somewhat beneficial. The work that they've done has been tremendous. And I just want to say thank you, Diane. You did an excellent job this morning.
Thank you, Stacy.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mrs. Rizzo. Mr. Franti?
Diane, so just for my own clarification, if elementary is doing the 40 hours per week, why do we have to put additional time onto them?
Right, and I really wouldn't advocate for that. I think that I think all of our grade levels are spot on with what they're doing. So I wouldn't advocate for adding the 11 minutes. That was just it's a suggestion of you know, just a raw average of what we would have to add so that the overall average time came out to be the 40, which is the number that the state is looking at. If we're rejected in our waiver application, then, and we did have to go back to negotiate if the committee decided that's what we would do, then we would probably be focused a little bit more on the middle school level, and seeing if we could add some time there.
If we don't do the 40 hours a week and we stay at the current 38, what can they do to us?
It's a great
What's the
question.
consequences?
It's a great question.
That's a, I mean,
You're on, Fred.
Mrs. Sinella.
Diane, I mean, with everything that's going on, this is the best that the State Department of Education can nitpick?
So
I mean,
it's
are
actually
there
the, yeah,
other-
it's actually the Board of Education that voted on this today, and it was a recommendation by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and I believe that was in response to some pushback from different constituents. I don't believe in Revere, people across the Commonwealth. I don't know exactly who's pushing this narrative. There may be issues around learning time in other districts, and I feel like this was an arbitrarily set rate. And I feel like even though we had to submit a survey to DESE identifying how many hours our kids spend in different modalities, synchronous, asynchronous, doing different pieces like that. And we had to describe a lot of our schedule, such as what we're doing to support teachers, to help them, and, you know, with the ramp up of skill set that they needed in this entirely different teaching structure. And we had to talk about what we were doing to engage kids asynchronously. We submitted all of that information to the state, but it looks like they literally looked at the number of hours and made their decision only based on that.
All right, so the question here is, are they expected to come down with the stopwatch and time? I mean, so send them another schedule and let them come down and time us. I mean, is Revere the only one?
No, they said about 1/3 of the districts in the state, so it's about 130 districts that were identified as not meeting the requirements. So we are one of them. I know that on the call that Dr. Mokaba did today, they differentiated districts that were close, which I feel like we are,
Yeah.
versus districts that are not. And I think that that's where the waiver process might play a role. But, you know, it's just as you've all articulated, it's really frustrating that this is what we're focusing our energy on when we're in the height of the pandemic and trying to figure out how we can get at least our special needs kids back to school. It's a distraction, to say the least.
Yes.
Shame on them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That is, I mean, if we were cutting here, there, and everywhere, but you're making every concerted effort to do it and do it as best you can, and they come up with that.
Yeah.
Wonders never cease.
Mhm.
I mean, I hope they're proud of themselves. Maybe they're justifying they have nothing else to do.
I don't know. I don't know what their motivation is.
Any other members? Comments?
Diane, are you going to share that with us, that document that you just had?
Yes, I can share that, and I can also share my comments to the board.
Great, thank you. I'm sure you did a wonderful job, and thank you, Stacy, for mentioning that.
I'll tell you, I had, my original comments were 7 minutes long, and it's a 3-minute maximum, so I was able to cut them back to 4 minutes, but, you know, I feel like I lost some of my essence in those 3 minutes, but I think the point was still made. But
I'm sure.
yeah,
Let's not worry about getting the kids to school. Let's worry about 11 minutes a day. We're not teaching. It's amazing.
and they are teaching. That's the thing. Those times when
Yeah,
when
I
a
know.
teacher is working with a small group of kids doesn't count.
It's
So that's
amazing.
part of the challenge. And I did hear, so, you know, maybe they listened a little bit today. I did hear that they were revisiting that piece. So that alone might put us over the benchmark. But we'll see.
Okay, we'll move on to the Nellie Mae grant.
Sure, and I just wanted to let you know, Dr. Garcia is going to be giving a fuller report. I think it's at the February meeting that he is updating us on the Equity Advisory Board's work. But that grant is officially granted.
Great.
We have a meeting
Congratulations.
tomorrow with Mass Insight on a kickoff for the equity audit. And the grant from Nellie Mae in total is $250,000. So that's pretty exciting. And so we're progressing.
Great.
I wanted to share that because last month when he gave his update, we hadn't yet gotten official word, even though we kind of knew we were getting it, but that's done now.
Okay, we'll move on to the MSBA Accelerated Repair Program.
Yeah, so this is pretty exciting. Tomorrow, the MSBA is, the review panel is going to recommend to the board that Revere be accepted into the Accelerated Repair Program for new boilers at the Beachmont School and new windows at the Lincoln School. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
Diane,
Who
is it
says
doors
there's no
also at the
Santa
Lincoln
Claus?
School?
Well,
Sorry,
one-
go ahead.
One at a time.
Okay,
We'll
sorry.
start with Mr. Franti and then Mr. Sedella.
Diane, I thought that the email you sent us said it was windows and doors at the Lincoln, or is it just?
It is windows and doors. When they come out and inspect, I think they're going to find that the doors are fine. We replaced them a number of years ago. It's the windows that we've really been trying to fix because they're such a mess.
Now we have to put it out to bid, the project?
Yeah, it'll be a bit of a process. Yeah, and especially in light of COVID, it's not unrealistic to think that this won't happen until next summer or even later than that. So we'll have to go through the whole process.
Okay.
You might recall that when we did the Garfield roof, we got delayed by a year because of the bidding process. So things like that could happen again.
Mr. Sinella?
Well, with the windows in place, the electrical work is done, the air conditioner is not far behind.
We're getting there. We really are getting there. And I know one of the things that Mr. Svensson sent an email to Mr. Viskey and myself today about one of the pieces that we need to do for the AC project is replace all of the thermostats in that building. And one of the challenges that we've encountered because they're so old is that we're having trouble finding replacement parts to hold us over until we are at that stage of the project. And he's going to recommend, Mr. Mayor, maybe you can help us with this, a capital project that we actually replace those thermostats now because we're going to have to do it anyway. It was part of the money that was allocated for the air conditioning project. And rather than hodgepodge parts from eBay, that's how desperate we are now. We're buying pieces on eBay because manufacturers aren't making them anymore. So it would be better to just get those thermostats and get that project done sooner than later.
Use some of the money that you're saving on the buses.
Believe me, Freddie, I'm going to spend every dime. All right. So I know that the next thing says regular meeting agenda items, but there were a few miscellaneous. If we could jump in on those. One of them is about attendance, and I put this on the agenda for the regular meeting as well, but wanted to kind of talk to you all about it first. One of the things that we've encountered with attendance, as you know, we have policies in our handbooks that students automatically fail if they reach a certain number of absences. And one of the places where we've struggled with that is that we have had occasion when kids are absent because their internet fails or something of that nature. And we really have no way of differentiating or confirming that on a broad scale. And we also had the first 2 weeks of school when we started back, and our Chromebook order had not yet come in until the end of September. So we had a number of students who have absences for those days, and legally we have to record those absences. But one of the things that I suggest that the committee change, and we talked about this a little bit over the summer, I think you'll recall that Mrs. Rizzo and the policy subcommittee had made a motion that we be able to visit policies as we need to when they don't make sense in COVID. And the policy of failing students based on attendance, I think, is one of those policies that we would change. We should change. One, for the reasons I just gave, but also the idea of failing a student because of attendance does not align with our initiatives around mastery-based grading, where the grade a student earns is based on what they know and not on all these other ancillary pieces. So principals have talked about excluding the FA, not having a failure because of absences, but instead noting in the habits of work grade if a student's attendance is excessive. And so making sure that parents are receiving that information and understand what the child's attendance looks like, but not penalizing the child academically on that basis.
I think that's a wonderful idea. It always bothered me when a child had been absent for a long period of time over several days and actually hit the limit that would fail. And that is detrimental to the teacher and to the rest of the class too. Well, not that they're all together now, but because you can get a kid to come back and to say, okay, I want to engage now, I want to do it. And you want to encourage that. So I'm really all in favor of changing that and leaving it up to the teacher to decide about whether the kid has mastery or not. And how the kid got it, you can always find a way to help the student do whatever it is that he or she needs to do. So I'm very much in favor of that.
Mr.
So
Chairman,
shall we have a meeting of the policy committee to address that?
Well, the challenges report cards go out next week. So it would be,
Oh,
and since technically you
then in that
have,
case-
through Stacy's motion, given me the authority already to make the change, I think a vote of support would be helpful, or not if people are not supportive of it.
oh, no, I'm very supportive of it. Can we do it in this meeting? Do it on the floor.
It is an agenda item on the floor, so it
We're on
might
the
be
floor.
worth,
Okay,
on the attendance part, Carol.
Yeah,
okay, yeah, yes, I just pulled out mine. Thank you.
it's on the superintendent's report.
Yep. The attendance update. Mhm.
Mr.
Brian,
Chairman,
you're unmuted.
Mr. Francie, did you have a comment?
Well, my only comment is that I don't think any child should fail under these circumstances with the internet not working or not getting Chromebooks. That's totally unfair. It's bad enough as it is, and that should not be a consideration while a child fails, in my opinion. So I'm 100% in agreement of waiving that or changing the policy entirely. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Sinella?
Mr. Chairman, through you, the superintendent, Diane, isn't the state, don't they have guidelines that indicate that if they miss X amount, even if they're a straight A student, that they fail?
They don't have a requirement that they fail. That's a local decision of the school committee.
Okay.
What they do is identify which kids have chronic absenteeism issues, and they will still have that information from us. They use that data actually to assess the school district, not the child. So we will probably get a little bit of another slap on the wrist for chronic absenteeism. If the Department of Education decides that still needs to be an accountability measure for schools and districts. And I'm not sure that they will. They might decide later in the year to collect that data and have it on hand for informational purposes, but not actually use it as accountability. Time will tell on that.
Will we have further discussion in our regular meeting on this?
Yes, yep.
I mean, because you just can't say carte blanche. For 7 days, it wasn't working. I mean, there's got to be some way of verifying what they're saying.
Right, and I think the key thing to understand is that this would be impactful for kids who have demonstrated mastery of the content. So if they know the content
Okay, okay.
They're gonna have to demonstrate that in order for this to matter.
Okay.
If
well,
they've been
that-
absent a lot and they don't know the content, they're still gonna not have a passing grade.
Okay, good. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other members have comments about attendance? Okay. Did we have any other miscellaneous items that folks wanted to bring up? No?
Yes.
Susan and Stacy both have their hands up.
Oh, sorry. I'm on my phone. I apologize. So I'm scrolling.
He pushed us to the other side. Diane, there was conversation regarding, I didn't know if we were going to talk about this under miscellaneous, the work week next week with the short week and the snow days, what we would do with those.
Mhm.
Did you
So
wanna bring those
there's,
up?
I think there are 3 workday related pieces that we should talk about. One of them is this Thursday, they're forecasting a major storm. And, I don't think that we need to decide this right now. I think that we should wait until tomorrow and see where that storm tracks. But the latest indicator is that Revere would have 8 to 12 inches of snow. And if that was the case, I would advocate for as many people as possible working from home that day. I know our custodians who do unbelievable work will still come in because they need to clear the pathways and do that kind of stuff. But even their shift could be scheduled in order to, or shifted in order to make sense with the snow arrival times and that kind of stuff. So that's one discussion point. The second is the week of December 21st, which is the week of Christmas, and teachers are expected to teach, because it's a short week, teach from their classrooms 2 days out of that week. It's actually, there are 2.5 school days that week because Wednesday is a half day. And one of the challenges that we've talked about before is when we have 100% of the staff in, which is basically what that would mean, 100% of the staff in on Monday and Tuesday, in some of our more crowded buildings like the Paul Revere, we'd have to do some scrambling to make sure that people aren't doubled up in classrooms, and make sure that they can properly social distance. And in some cases that might require them teaching with masks on. So it's something that is worth considering for the same reason that we considered that on the Thanksgiving week.
Yes. Mhm.
And then the third piece is the week between Christmas and New Year's, which is a time that only our secretaries and custodians would be scheduled to be in. We do have cafeteria workers scheduled to come in on the 29th in order to do food service for that week. So they would be a question as well. But I think that what we could talk about, if the committee is so inclined, is whether there is some rationale to reduce people's hours in that week so that they could tend to their families and do what they need to do, especially because we've had such a reduced rate of wear and tear on our buildings compared to where we normally are in December. I think that having our custodians and secretaries and administrators in is not necessarily as much needed as it would be in a typical year. So those, I guess, are the 3 question marks I would ask for feedback on.
When do we have to deal with these?
Soon, it's next week.
I mean,
Well, Thursday is the day after
Thursday.
tomorrow.
Thursday immediately. But Diane, you always have decided whether that should be a snow day or not. I think it would be a wonderful thing to do if we're having 17 inches of snow. I mean, we do need to watch the pathway of the snow now, but I mean, I think it only makes sense to
Yeah.
let them work from
And-
home.
Yeah, and I don't think that we would call it a snow day. I think we would say that it's a remote learning day.
Right, and so
Right,
here's
remote
the
learning day.
advantage. We don't have snow days to make up at the end of the
Right.
year.
Yeah.
Exactly. We won't have to make them up, which would be good. So it would be a remote day. And then as far as like December 31st, same thing with the Thanksgiving week. I can't see bringing full staff in, especially during the time where the peak of the second wave is here. So
Yeah.
I'm in favor of them working from home. I don't know what anyone else's
I am too.
opinions are. Anthony said yes.
Absolutely.
Michael.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, just bringing everyone in together doesn't make sense right now.
And it won't be a perfect rollout for custodians. As I mentioned, like there are some things that they'll have to come in and facilitate the food service program on those 2 days, but we can certainly shift people so that everybody gets a bit more time off than they typically would.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I see Mrs. Rizzo has a hand up. I don't know if the mayor can see that.
Mrs. Rizzo.
Oh, it's been up. Diane, I just wanted to touch base on the flu vaccine, and I'm glad you said a local decision because that's how I always thought it was supposed to be. But I had listened to comments from Matt Malone and a few other people, and they were talking about DCF, and I was like getting all verklempt thinking about there's enough on their plate. I mean, I wouldn't
Right.
want to have to report any of our students because of the flu vaccine. So I think at this point right now, if maybe Jess and the school nurses and perhaps yourself can just start talking about how we are going to set up guidelines. Even though we're remote, by law, they're still supposed to have it.
Yeah. Mhm.
But if you can also, and I'm sure Jess is already talking about it. But if you could start talking about it and maybe get back to us and give us a little bit of information, that would be great.
Absolutely. And I apologize. I shouldn't say I didn't get a chance, but I didn't email her yesterday. I emailed her just this afternoon and it was too late. I'm sure she didn't see my message. I can tell you, and maybe Richie can add to this too, that she and the nurses have been doing the work of communicating with families and finding out who has the vaccine and who still needs it. The city health department set up 3 different flu clinics. And I believe that between the 3 of them, we had about 700 kids vaccinated. So that's a decent number. I don't know if Richie, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that we've been doing a weekly reminder where we send out the flu requirement as an informational sheet to families. And typically that's accompanied by where can you get the flu shot flyer as well. So that's been going on pretty regularly. I've been in communication with Jess every day, but at least every week on the flu topic. And we've been communicating as much as possible. And I've spoke to a few families who've called up with concerns. And we've been able to find a common ground on that.
Good.
Thanks, Richie. That's great information. Thank you.
Mr.
Welcome.
Chairman, one question.
Mr. Franti.
Richie, do we have to turn the names into the state or do we have to just keep it for our records who's been vaccinated or not?
I don't think we're at that point yet. I know the nurses are keeping track of our students right now. So if we did ultimately have to report that, we could, but we're not at the stage where we are.
Okay. Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Mrs. Gravellisi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Diane, did you, maybe I just misunderstood in the email. At a local level, is it the decision of the district if you're hybrid, if it's mandatory or not?
Well, actually, no, the reaction to kids who don't have the flu vaccine, how you respond to those kids is a local decision. So the school committee gets to decide if they want to, for example, exclude those kids from participation or not. It's one of the recommendations that is still on the state website today is that students who don't have the flu vaccine be excluded, even if you're in a remote learning environment. I think that, you know, to the point that Michael made earlier about punishing kids over attendance because their internet didn't work, it's the same kind of thing. If kids are learning remotely in their home, why are we going to exclude them from participation in learning? It's going to make it harder on the kids and harder on us to close the gap when they do come back. So,
And also, Diane, it goes back to your transportation. if we only have like a 2-week notice and there's so many students that don't have the vaccine, now we're taking a chance of letting them in school. So it works both ways. So
Yeah.
that's where we really need to have some guidance and guidelines to it.
Yeah. And
Instead
I'll
of waiting
also
until the
point
last
out though,
minute.
the impetus for the state to impose this new regulation around flu vaccines was to ensure that the hospitals were not overwhelmed during COVID time. So, that's the real reason that they're doing that. And as we've learned in recent months, fewer kids have severe reactions, even if they do contract COVID. So the kids are not going to overwhelm the hospitals the way it was feared when the state made this new regulation. So I think we should kind of keep that in mind as well when we're deciding how to react.
And excuse me, one more question, Diane. If a parent chooses to keep their child 100% remote, even if we go back to school hybrid, that parent is still required to have that child have a flu vaccination?
Supposed to be.
Yeah, the regulation says that even right now that we're fully remote, that all of our kids are supposed to be vaccinated, and we're supposed to make sure they are by December 31st.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other members? Okay, seeing no further business, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
And we'll hop right over